She mocked Chuck Norris, flaunting her millions of followers, until he revealed his own. What happened next? A brutal lesson in respect. Now picture this. It's a prestigious charity gala at the Avalon Grand, the most exclusive event hall in New York City. The kind of place where billionaires sip champagne. The chandeliers cost more than most homes, and the guest list is tighter than national security. It's a night of elegance, meant for those who claim to care about philanthropy, though many are simply here to be seen. In a quiet corner of the room, Chuck Norris sits at his table, cutting into his steak with the patience of a man who's seen it all. He's dressed in a simple black button-up and jeans. No tuxedo, no cufflinks, just Chuck. He flips through a worn-out book of classic philosophy quotes between bites, undisturbed by the glittering chaos around him. That's when she arrives. Madison Blake, CEO of a multi-million-dollar fashion empire and self-proclaimed queen of influence. With a team of assistants in tow and cameras flashing like paparazzi, she makes her entrance as if walking a Paris runway. Every step is rehearsed, every gesture calculated for maximum impact. Her designer gown clings to her like it was sculpted by the gods themselves, and in her diamond-covered hand, she holds a smartphone, already live streaming. "Darlings, you won't believe where I am right now," she coos into the camera, her voice dripping with self-importance. The Avalon Grand's exclusive charity event. VIP access, of course. They practically begged me to come. A waiter, unsure whether to interrupt the diva mid-broadcast, politely asks for her invitation. Madison Blake narrows her eyes behind oversized sunglasses. "Do you know who I am?" she snaps, waving the phone like a royal decree. "I donate more in a week than this place makes in a year. Move." Chuck takes another bite of his steak, shaking his head slightly. He's seen this kind before. People who think power is measured in social media followers and dollar signs. He flips another page in his book, uninterested. But Madison Blake isn't done. As she's being escorted to her exclusive VIP table, she suddenly stops mid-step. Her sharp, manicured eyes land on Chuck. "What is that?" she sneers to her assistant, the microphone of her phone still hot, transmitting her every thought to millions. Why is he here? Chuck, oblivious, cuts into another piece of steak. Madison Blake's nostrils flare. "This is supposed to be a luxury event," she mutters, making no effort to lower her voice. "I mean, come on. Denim? At Avalon? Someone get him out of my shot." Her assistant, eager to please, leans in. "Ma'am, I believe that's Chuck Norris." Madison Blake blinks. "Who?" The assistant hesitates. "You know, martial artist, actor, legend." She scoffs. "Sounds ancient. My audience doesn't care about action stars from like 100 years ago." She turns to her phone. "Everyone, can we talk about the dress code violation going on behind me? It's giving like janitor who won the lottery." Chuck finally looks up, his blue eyes as calm as a still lake. He sets his fork down and wipes his mouth with a cloth napkin, as if he's preparing for something far more entertaining than his meal. Madison Blake struts over, her assistant scrambling behind her. She stops at his table, flashing the kind of rehearsed smile usually reserved for cameras. "Hey, Chuck, is it?" she says, placing a hand on the table as if she's already claimed ownership of the space. "Would you mind moving to another seat? You're kinda ruining my visual aesthetic for this live stream. No offense." Chuck leans back, studying her with the same patience he'd give a rookie trying to start a fight in a bar. "No offense taken," he says coolly, then takes another sip of water. Madison Blake's smile tightens. "Great. So, you'll move?" Chuck doesn't move an inch. "No, ma'am." Her eye twitches. "Do you even know who I am?" Chuck exhales, setting his glass down. No, ma'am, I can't say that I do. Madison Blake's face contorts like someone just insulted her ancestors. I'm Madison Blake, 5 million followers. I make more money in a month than most people do in a lifetime. The gala has gone silent. Guests are turning to watch the confrontation unfold, some discreetly pulling out their phones. Chuck glances around, then back at her, his face unreadable. He pulls out his own phone, unlocking it with a tap. 5 million, you say? That's impressive. He scrolls for a moment before turning the screen to face her. Looks like I have 6 million. The blood drains from Madison Blake's face. Her fingers clench around her phone as she stares at the number. It's real. Verified. Higher than hers. Chuck takes a slow, measured sip of his water. So, I guess you're 1 million short. The tension in the room is so thick, you could slice it with the steak knife on Chuck's plate. The silent shock on Madison Blake's face is worth more than 1 million followers combined. And little does she know, this is only the beginning. Before we continue this story, let us know where you're watching from. The tension in the Upscale venue was thick enough to cut with a steak knife. Madison, still fuming, stood frozen in the manager's office, her confidence crumbling like an overbaked soufflé. She had stormed in expecting immediate compliance, a groveling apology, and the swift removal of the man who dared interrupt her perfect evening. Instead, she was met with a manager who looked at her as if she had just insulted the entire state of Texas. Mr. Thompson, the restaurant's seasoned manager, rubbed his temples as if physically bracing himself for the nonsense unfolding before him. He'd dealt with high-maintenance customers before, but Madison Blake was in a league of her own. "Miss Blake," he said, his voice level, "are you seriously asking me to remove Chuck Norris from this establishment?" Madison let out a dramatic sigh, rolling her eyes so hard they nearly got stuck in the back of her head. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. He's ruining my brand, my image. Do you have any idea how much I get paid per post? My followers expect luxury, class, exclusivity, and that old cowboy is throwing off my entire aesthetic." Mr. Thompson exhaled slowly, glancing toward the dining area where the legend himself sat, cool as ever, enjoying his steak as if the scene around him wasn't unraveling into chaos. "Miss Blake," he said, "I need you to listen very carefully. That old cowboy is more respected in a single day than most influencers will be in their entire careers. While you're out here chasing validation through pixels on a screen, he's actually made a difference in people's lives." Madison scoffed, crossing her arms. "Oh, please. He's just some washed-up action star. His time is over. People care about me now. That's how the world works. Out with the old, in with the new." The manager's expression hardened. "You think numbers make you important? That money makes you untouchable? Let me tell you something, Miss Blake. Real influence isn't about how many people follow you. It's about how you treat the people standing right in front of you." She waved him off dismissively. "Ugh, whatever. If you're not going to do your job, I'll handle it myself." Spinning on her designer heels, she stomped out of the office, her rage barely contained. The moment she stepped back into the dining area, she saw Chuck still sitting calmly, savoring each bite of his meal. The entire restaurant had gone from hushed murmurs to a full-blown audience, eyes flicking between her and the man she had tried to belittle. Phones were recording, and the once adoring comments from her live stream had taken a nasty turn against her. "You seriously tried to kick out Chuck Norris? This is embarrassing. Respect your elders, lady." Unfollowed. Realizing her pristine image was slipping through her manicured fingers, Madison tried to pivot. "Look, everyone, this has just been a huge misunderstanding." she said, forcing a smile. I totally respect. What was your name again? Chuck. And I was just trying to make sure we all had the best experience possible. Chuck finally set his fork down and looked at her, his piercing blue eyes holding an amusement that made her even more uneasy. You've spent the last 20 minutes making a scene because you couldn't get your perfect shot, he said, in that measured tone that made grown men think twice before crossing him. But I'll let you in on a little secret. Madison swallowed hard. What? Chuck leaned forward slightly. Respect will take you further than any number on a screen ever will. Silence. The weight of his words pressed down like an anvil. Madison opened her mouth to fire back, but nothing came out. The reality of her behavior, the eyes watching her, the hundreds of thousands of people on her own live stream who had turned against her. It was all too much. Her phone vibrated violently in her hand. A notification, then another, and another. One by one, brands were pulling their sponsorships. Madison Blake, once the darling of high-end endorsements, was being canceled. Not by the haters, not by trolls, but by her own arrogance. Chuck picked up his glass, took a slow sip, then stood up. He placed a crisp $100 bill on the table and turned to leave. But before walking out, he glanced over his shoulder and delivered the final blow. Influence isn't about who follows you. It's about who would stand beside you when no one's watching. With that, Chuck Norris walked out into the night, leaving behind a viral lesson Madison Blake would never forget. The fallout from Madison Blake's viral humiliation at the Silver Spoon wasn't just instant, it was catastrophic. Within minutes, her live stream had been clipped, shared, and mocked across every platform imaginable. The internet had turned against her, and it wasn't just the usual trolls and critics. Even her most loyal followers were questioning their devotion to the self-absorbed influencer. Meanwhile, inside the Silver Spoon, Chuck Norris had returned to his quiet dinner, unbothered by the chaos he had just dismantled, with nothing more than calm composure and a few well-placed words. He never sought attention, but attention always seemed to find him. Outside, Madison was pacing furiously on the sidewalk, her camera still rolling as she ranted to her followers. Do you guys see what just happened? I was literally ambushed. That place is a joke. And Chuck Norris? Please, who even cares about some retired action star? Her comments section begged to differ. Oh my God, Madison, just stop. You embarrassed yourself. Did you seriously just say that about Chuck Norris? Delete this now. Respect is earned, not bought. You lost more than just a table tonight. Wow, this is a career-ending moment, and she doesn't even realize it. Madison's face burned red as she scrolled, her fingers gripping her phone like a lifeline. She refused to believe that this was happening. Her entire brand was built on status, luxury, and exclusivity. She had spent years crafting an online empire based on the illusion that she was untouchable. But tonight, the curtain had been ripped away, and everyone had seen what was underneath. She needed damage control. Fast. She jumped into her luxury SUV, hastily propping up her phone on the dashboard for what she called an emergency response video. The dim glow of streetlights cast eerie shadows across her face as she forced out a deep, dramatic sigh, the kind designed to make people feel sorry for her. So, I just want to clear the air about what happened tonight, she began, putting on her best, vulnerable but still fabulous expression. I was totally disrespected at the Silver Spoon. I was just trying to create content and show you guys an amazing experience. And then this old guy, Chuck Norris or whatever, ruined my entire night. And everyone just turned on me? For what? Because I wanted my shot to look nice? Her eyes flicked to the comments. Oh no, she's doubling down. This is worse than I expected. You disrespected an actual legend and made a fool of yourself. Own it. Chuck Norris has done more for people than you ever will. Maybe sit this one out. Madison's forced confidence cracked. She bit her lip, blinking rapidly as the reality of the situation finally started to sink in. This wasn't just another PR hiccup she could laugh off in a podcast interview 6 months from now. This was something deeper, something worse. She wasn't trending. She was trending for all the wrong reasons. Back inside the Silver Spoon, the manager, Mr. Thompson, had returned to Chuck's table. "Mr. Norris," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "I've worked in this business for 20 years, and I've never seen someone handle a situation with that much class." Chuck simply took another sip of his iced tea, offering a small nod. Some lessons teach themselves. The entire restaurant, still abuzz with energy, knew that they had just witnessed something special. Chuck had reminded them all of a truth so many seemed to forget in the age of instant fame. Real influence isn't about numbers. It's about character. Outside, Madison's influencer kingdom was crumbling by the second. Her sponsors were already pulling their deals. Her management team was frantically trying to reach her, and a wave of public backlash was rolling in like an unstoppable tide. She had spent years believing that her power lay in her followers. But now, as she sat in her car, watching everything slip through her fingers, she realized something terrifying. Followers could vanish overnight. Respect, once lost, was nearly impossible to regain. And Chuck Norris? He didn't even have to try. That's what real influence looked like. Before we continue this story, let us know where you're watching from. The moment Madison Blake answered her phone, the air around her seemed to crackle with tension. Her face, already flushed from anger, drained of all color as she listened to her agent's frantic voice on the other end. "What do you mean they're dropping me?" she hissed, turning away from the camera still recording her live meltdown. Her nails dug into the leather of her designer handbag. "No, this has to be a mistake. I'm the biggest name in luxury content creation. They can't just..." The answer on the other end hit her like a gut punch. Her sponsorships, gone. Her premium influencer network, suspended. 3 of her biggest contracts, terminated immediately. Madison staggered back, gripping the phone tighter, as if she could will the words away. Wait, she stammered, her voice no longer holding that artificial confidence she wielded like a weapon. "Just tell them I'll post an apology video. I'll fix this." Her agent sighed. "It's too late, Madison. You went after Chuck Norris. You don't come back from that." The line went dead. Back inside the Sterling Oak, the luxurious New York restaurant where the whole debacle had unfolded, Chuck Norris sat at his table, finishing the last bite of his steak. The restaurant had long since returned to a comfortable hum, but there was still a buzz in the air, as if everyone present knew they had just witnessed something unforgettable. A waiter hesitated before approaching. "Mr. Norris, sir, that was..." He let out a small chuckle. "That was something else." Chuck simply smiled, dabbing his mouth with a napkin before reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a few crisp bills and set them on the table, a generous tip for the evening's entertainment. "Lesson learned, I hope," he said casually, standing up and stretching as if he had just finished a light workout, rather than dismantling an influencer's entire empire with a few well-placed words. As he turned to leave, he paused by the restaurant's guest book, flipping it open to a fresh page. With a pen that had seen its fair share of autographs, he scrawled a single line. "True influence isn't measured by followers, but by the lives you touch, with respect and kindness." The manager, Mr. Thompson, who had so firmly handled Madison's meltdown, stepped up beside him. "Sir, I don't think we'll be seeing her here again. But if she does come back—" He hesitated. "What should we tell her?" Chuck turned, his expression as calm as ever. "Tell her what my mother always said. Manners are free, but their value is priceless." With that, he stepped out into the crisp New York evening. The city buzzed around him, neon lights reflecting off the wet pavement. His phone vibrated in his pocket, but he ignored it. He didn't need to check the notifications to know what they would say. Inside her luxury SUV parked outside the restaurant, Madison sat in stunned silence, watching the numbers on her screen drop by the thousands. The apology video she had planned, carefully scripted and dripping with self-pity, was already failing. The comments flooded in. "This is why we love Chuck Norris. Money can't buy class. She still doesn't get it. Respect is earned, not demanded." Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't from regret. They were from realization. She had spent her whole life chasing numbers, chasing validation through screens, only to have it all come crashing down because she had disrespected someone who didn't need the internet to prove his worth. And worst of all, it had all been her own doing. Back on the street, Chuck walked toward his truck, the distant hum of the city a comforting background to his thoughts. As he reached for the door handle, his phone buzzed again. This time, he glanced at the screen. His follower count had just jumped to 2.5 million. Not that he was counting. As he climbed into his truck and turned the ignition, a young busboy ran out of the restaurant, breathless. "Sir," he called out, "one last thing." Chuck waited, one hand on the wheel, curious. "If she ever does come back," the young man asked, "what should we do?" Chuck gave him that signature smirk. "Just remind her, fame fades, but character lasts forever." With that, he pulled away, disappearing into the night, leaving behind a restaurant full of people who would never forget the lesson they had just witnessed firsthand. Because in a world obsessed with likes, follows, and viral moments, Chuck Norris had just reminded everyone of the most valuable currency of all: respect. In a world obsessed with social media status, luxury, and fleeting fame, true influence isn't about numbers, it's about character. Respect isn't bought with wealth or followers. It's earned through integrity, kindness, and how we treat others. Madison's downfall wasn't a loss of sponsorships. It was the revelation that real respect cannot be demanded, only given. Chuck Norris demonstrated that humility and self-respect always triumph over arrogance. In today's society, where online personas often overshadow real values, this story reminds us that dignity, humility, and genuine impact will always outshine superficial success. Influence fades, but character lasts forever.
If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe Undercover Insights channel.